Are you stuck wondering about which Imperial should be joining your side? There is a whopping 43 Imperial characters at the time of this video, so let's see who makes the top 10. And this is no dirty dozen, it's just 10 of the most versatile and impressive Imperials in the game that you will want to be leveling up. In at number 10, down 3 places, it's Tacticus Noble, and this Master of Ordnance is one of the most important members of the Astra Militarum, and the Imperials as a whole. You can find him at the back of every major battlefield, surveying for enemies at distance, calculating the angles, and then calling in an artillery strike. The only problem? He misses just as much as he hits, and that means you can't even rely on him to take out the enemies. In fact, you better just hope that he doesn't hit your allies. So why is he here? Well, quite simply because when Basilisk Barrage does hit, it really hits hard. And it also suppresses the enemy, meaning they can't use Overwatch, lose 1 movement, and do 30% less damage next turn. So overall, it is a plus point, and if you have a pesky Revas set up to control the battlefield, then Tacticus will clear the path for everyone to move in. But that's not even the most impressive part of his kit, because his passive, Spotter, is the thing that really sees him added to a lot of different teams. This boosts the damage of any sniper within 2 hexes that has the heavy weapons trait, and it's quite a boost to damage as well. On top of this, he can shoot enemies that he can't even see, so if they're hidden by high ground or trying to hide in a trench, then he's going to bomb the living daylights out of them. So with all this in mind, why has he fallen this year? Well, very simply, it's the second year of Tacticus, and power creep has started to come in. We are seeing more and more mobile champions like Metanio, Dante, and even Tarvak and Jude, who can all close the distance from the start of the battle, and once they get on top of Tacticus, he is simply paper. The other thing is that where he used to have a beginner spot in the Neurothrope Guildraid team, there are just much better characters there, and for all other Guildraid teams, you really want a sustained melee fighter or mechanical characters for the most part. But if you want a grumpy old man that bombs from the back lines, then just give me a call, or a better option is Tacticus. In at number 9, and keeping its place from last year's top 10, it's Incisus. This poor maligned Imperial is still one of the most important characters in your lineup. It doesn't matter how much better Isabella is, I will always have a place for this stunning healer in my top 10. Even with the addition of Nicodemus, Incisus just pips him to the top 10 because of his kit. Apart from anything else, he is easily the hardest hitting healer we have in the game right now, coming in at 16th place overall for melee damage, and that is simply down to his 1-hit piercing attack that has an 80% pierce ratio. This sets him up to be a crucial part of the 1-hit piercing battles in legendary events, where you will often find him sitting alongside Janezar and Tyrant Guard, keeping them alive all the way to the very last stages. He's also seen a recent tweak to his active and passive abilities that really keep him relevant in today's teams. Firstly, his Narthessian passive ability that revives any adjacent ally as long as they haven't been overkilled is an amazing ability. He can do this once per round, and it can now bring allies back up to nearly 6,000 health, which really gives them a good chance to survive another few hits. The reliability and flexibility in this passive has been a bit ignored by the community, and that is another reason to go check him out. And it doesn't stop there, because his active, Combat Restoratives, now heals everyone around him for up to the same amount as 6,000. But if it's a team of Imperials, it can be up to nearly 7,500, and that is definitely not something to be ignored. It allows you to really go for round 2 in any battle. And so his medical tools are pristine, but his sense of humour remains beyond repair. So if you want a humourless white knight with a glorious red cloak covering his modesty, then level up Incisus today. In at number 8, someone else keeping their place from last year's top 10, it's Sarquel, and it would feel very wrong to leave the Imperial top 10 without an overwatching champion. I really wish it was Certus, but the truth is that in just about every area, Sarquel is the better champion. I've recently been including him in nearly every Imperial team that I have, alongside Baraquel and sometimes even Azrael, because the 3 of them together just make a really great trio for dealing with any chaotic nonsense or Xenos zealots. Facing up against Sarquel is a pain because he loves nothing more than shooting with wild abandon at anyone that comes near him. Shot 1 comes from his Overwatch, and his plasma gun with 65% pierce ratio really does hurt. Shot 2 comes from his passive Grim Retribution, and as long as the enemy is not in melee, then Sarquel will take a shot at the first enemy that attacks him or any friendly adjacent Dark Angels. Then Shot 3 comes courtesy of his final vengeance, because just when you thought he was down and out, this badass with a Mohican haircut lets rip at you one final time. And if all that isn't enough, and Sarquel's still standing, then he is going to let loose with an almighty supercharged active ability shot that smashes into an enemy, and then continues through to hit 2 other enemies behind him. And every shot hits with a 90% pierce ratio this round, and if they live, any plasma damage against those characters are gonna also have 90% pierce ratio for the following round. And so it's easy to see why this champion makes the top 10 Imperial list. So if you want a badass Mohican who looks like he's halfway there to joining the AdMech team with his metal arm and robotic eye, then level up Sarquel today. And at number 7, down 3 places from last year, it's Celestine. And I don't think anyone can be surprised at the inclusion of this really annoying bird woman, because anytime you face her, it feels like you have to kill her 3 times over. Attached to her sword, she carries roses to show she cares, and this little windmill will fly over the battlefield in a glorious golden suit of armor and sky strike from above, jumping down to any hex on the battlefield and smashing those roses down your throat with a prickly bunch of additional damage. And this flying prom queen gets everyone hot and bothered with her Act of Faith, which sees her crit chance and crit damage continually increase every time an Imperial unit dies or an enemy is killed. This increased fervored rage is reset once Celestine hits a crit, so she can definitely power herself up a fair bit, and it means you should always be trying to go last with her in a round. But the most annoying part about facing her are the 2 terrible twins, Genevieve and Eleanor, who are her Gemini Superior, because anytime that Celestine gets hit, one of them is going to swoop in, take those hits for her, and that means it's incredibly difficult to take her down. There is nothing more annoying than having to waste hits on Celestine to help spawn her terrible twins, but if you don't, then this saint will just keep on smashing you. The only saving grace is that she's one of the toughest characters to open in the game currently, and so she hasn't joined everyone's team. But if you want a glow-in-the-dark angel backed up by 2 immortal bodyguards with great hair, then Celestine is the one for you. And at number 6, down 4 places, it's Isabella Marroquin. And another Adepta Sororitas member joins the list, and for another year running, Isabella is still the absolute top healer in the game and makes our list with ease. So why has she dropped down the list so far? Well, that's mainly because the developers of Tacticus Snowprint have pretty much stripped her out of every legendary event going, due to her absolute power as the babe in the middle of a battle bowl bolstering brothers in every battle going. And with healers having little else to do in the game, it means that she definitely should drop down the list a little bit. However, she still keeps everyone alive from sunup to sundown with her passive Medicus Ministorum, which restores health to any non-mechanical ally adjacent to her whenever they take damage, and that means it's nearly impossible to kill tanks without taking down Isabella first. She's the type of gal that'll stitch back on your arm, quote you some scripture, and then make sure that you know how spiritually disappointing you really are. But what isn't disappointing is that, like Celestine, she also has an Act of Faith trait, which increases her damage and her crit chance, while her buddies are a killing or a dying. Finally, the last piece of her curvy kit is her Rites of Restoration active ability, which sees her revive not only 1 Imperial non-mechanical character, but also 2 summons, and that also works especially well with our last character Celestine, as she can revive the 2 Gemini Superior at the same time. It's unbelievable, but just a little less versatile in different modes than she was last year. So if you want to be healed while getting screamed at in Latin, then Isabella is the one for you. And at number 5, it's a first new entry on this list, Metanio, and this jump pack intercessor sergeant has seen plenty of action since his release in autumn last year. This red armoured hero with a lightning bolt on his knee is the epitome of pain for your enemies, and as part of the power creep we've seen in the second year Tacticus, he has 4 movement, can fly, and even deep strike into enemy forces at the start of battle. Well, actually at the start of battle he's 5 movement because of his rapid assault trait that increases movement by 1 until you've attacked, as well as giving you 25% extra damage. It's such an annoying character, and one of the main reasons that characters like Thaddeus Noble and Isabella have fallen a little bit in power recently. Nowhere is safe on the battlefield from Metanio, especially if he uses his active Hammer of Wrath to jump onto an enemy within 5 hexes, which is pretty much the whole battlefield, and to smash not only one enemy, but all enemies adjacent to it. It's a devastating attack that is made even more powerful when Metanio is under 50% health because it doubles the damage done by this ability. It's a crushing blow for your enemies. He is 80% genetically enhanced muscle and 20% jump jets. But that isn't all, because as you can imagine, this sergeant is not alone. When he charges into someone, he will quickly call for backup, and we will see an aggressive onslaught where 2 other intercessors attack his target. The only weird thing with these guys is that they don't stick around to fight, instead leaving the battlefield at the start of Metanio's turn, if he is still alive that is. It's a bit of a weird decision for them to leave, but then I'm sure they have a lot of other very important business to take care of, like writing tragic poetry about their Primarch, or trying hard to avoid anything triggering their faction's genetic flaw, the Black Rage. Either way, if you want an emo leader dressed like the Flash and moving around the battlefield just as quickly, then Metanio is the one for you. In at number 4 and up 2 places, it's Bellator, the blue-eyed boy of the Ultramarines and Warhammer's most famous warrior. Not only is he the pinnacle of perfection, but you can find him pinned up on every young boy's wall as the hero of Games Workshop. Bellator specifically is sporting a rather striking red helmet to go with his blue armor, and that shows that he's not just any Inceptor, he's a Sergeant Inceptor, but definitely not to be confused with Metanio the Intercessor Sergeant, because they are obviously completely different champions, right? Well, for a start, Bellator is one of the oldest characters released, but he is still holding his own in many different modes, mainly because of his active ability, Death from Above, which lets him spawn in a whole troop of Bella babies. In fact, you get 1 extra swooping for every round that is passed, and they drop into an adjacent hex on the enemy you're attacking, and unlike Metanio, these don't fly off. Instead, these busy little blue bees fly around the battlefield causing all kinds of trouble, but most of all when they're right next to Bellator, his active ability, Shock Assault, will give them an extra attack when Bellator attacks, and a healthy dose of extra damage to boot. And these are not easily taken down either, because they're all sporting the latest Mark 10 Gravis armor, which means you not only have to punch them once, but twice, as any non-critting damage has to go through his armor a second time before it lands. So jetpack, check. Bolt pistol, check. Subtlety, absolutely none. So if you want the most famous Space Marine archetype in the game, Bellator is the one for you. In at number 3, keeping his place from last year, it's Ragnar, and this incredible space wolf is still one of the most impressive melee champions in the game, even with some recent tweaks to his abilities. You can hear this champion coming from a mile away, and probably smell him from further. His main power lies in his wolf howl, which is a pretty awesome active ability, because as long as Ragnar hasn't moved his furry butt this round, then he will raise his fangs to the sky and howl as loudly as he can. Then all friendly characters that don't have a normal ranged attack gain unstoppable until the end of the turn, allowing them to charge straight over fire, ice and trenches. But the most important part is that they get increased crit chance and deal extra damage. It's an incredible powerhouse of a skill that's mostly used in guild raids with a solid melee team. Now this is already the second legendary character on this list, and that means the Imperials are already a lot more stacked on this side of things than the Xenos were, and there may even be more to come, who knows. So it's not unexpected that you won't have all of them, but at least we can look at who the most versatile and useful ones to invest your 3 months grinding their shards into. And as a legendary character, he certainly isn't done yet, because his passive allows him to run around in an absolute fervour of fur when he is charging into combat, and that just means that he's closing the distance to another character, he gets extra hits and crit damage. And then if he's killed someone, then any other Space Wolf allies will also get this ability. But wait, there's even more, and only now should you be truly starting to understand why this champion puts up such incredible scores in guild raids, because he also has the Rapid Assault trait, which gives him +1 movement until he's attacked, as well as 25% extra damage. Then he has the Beast Slayer trait, which adds another 20% damage to big targets and vehicles, while adding a little bit of extra protection as he gets an increased block chance. You would think that would be more than enough for one character, but he also has one final roll of the dice, or at least swing of his giant Frostfang sword, as he will try and hit someone if he does fall in battle and isn't overkilled. So if you want the Lord of the Wolves to be your little puppy dog, then Ragnar is the one for you. In at number 2, and it's another new entry on the list, and this time it's Tangida. And this may be a surprise for some of you, because this quiet little robotic Skitarii marshal has just been getting on with his business ever since his release. Very rarely is he mentioned in any great list, or as one of the most versatile Imperials in the game, but that's because his power is really hidden behind his abilities, and individually they don't seem all that great, but when you package them up into this mechanical wonder, then you'll start to wonder why you didn't level him up in the first place. Firstly, his passive ability, Control Edict, starts off pretty standard, as Tangida spawns a Skitarii Vanguard whenever he shoots someone, up to a maximum of 5 spawns, and these have a really decent pool of health, some armor, and a chunk of damage as well. Even more impressive is the toxic waste that Tangida and the Vanguards leave lying around the battlefield. Once a cell is contaminated, then it strips 30% armor from any non-mechanical or Death Guard champion, and that really does make a big difference and lets these little toasters do a real good chunk of damage. And they are further enhanced by Tangida's Doctrina Imperatives, which affect him and all friendly adjacent mechanical units. He has 2 different imperatives to switch between. Firstly, the Protector Imperative, which adds a chunk of extra armor plating, and this is really great for his Skitarii, who usually try and surround Tangida, at least until they see an enemy, and will run over like a short-circuited resistor until they're killed. The other imperative is the Conqueror Imperative, and that lets any enemy with a reduced armor, like those standing on contaminated hexes for example, take a healthy dose of extra damage. So the general process for Tangida is to spit out Skitaris until his command modules are maxed out, and then for them to start laying down the damage. It's a brutal combination, and although it sounds so unimpressive, I guarantee you that you will find this little metal man in every mode going. There isn't a single one that he can't be used in successfully, and that's why he is so high up as one of the most versatile and useful Imperial champions in the game. So if you want something that sounds like a ZX Spectrum trying to load and spends a little bit too long upgrading firmware for another backup contingency plan, then Tangida is the one for you.
I'm at number 1. They call me a god! Yes, it's me, Castellan Creed, the hero of Cadia and the regimental commander of the 8th Cadian.
No, Creed, stop. You're not number 1. We love you, but until we get some more love for the Astra Militarum, then you are sadly still one of the most average champions in the game. Instead, in at number 1, keeping his place from last year, it's Marneus Calgar, and this is still easily my favourite champion in the game. There is something so unbelievably powerful about the current chapter master of the Ultramarines. I don't know if it's those immense fists, the tremendous chain guns, or just the sheer presence of Calgar on the battlefield. Probably the whole lot together, and that's why I absolutely love playing this champion. Most commanders bring a battle plan, but Calgar brings 2 giant gauntlets of Ultramar onto the field, and this is definitely a brilliant active ability that is so satisfying to use. It sees Calgar shoot all enemies around him within 2 hexes, and has an extra hit against those adjacent to him. That is an incredible amount of punishment that he lays down, and he can wipe out whole armies with a little flick of his wrists. My favourite is still when I get Archimatos to drop his demons on Calgar, and then laugh as they are sent straight back to the warp in disgrace. As a leader though, he is second to none with his rites of battle, adding an immense amount of damage to all adjacent friendly characters. I use it with a lot of new characters to make sure I'm getting through their hero release event missions as quickly as possible, and the damage is even higher when it's an Imperial that's next to Calgar. Of course, there are other heroes in the game that boost other characters' damage, but no one does it with the style and charisma of Calgar, and he is definitely not a champion you can ignore in any way either. With his Mark 10 Gravis armor, he's an absolute nightmare to chunk through, and more often than not, he will be my last champion standing, still swinging, and if he finally does get taken down, he is another one with final vengeance, ready to throw one last punch at the enemy. Creed, what do you think of Calgar? Is he worthy of this top spot?
Calgar may not be the sharpest strategist I've met, but if you need someone to knock over a titan and deliver a victory speech with full punctuation, he's definitely your guy.
Yep, and I think that sums up this legendary character perfectly. So if you want the most versatile Imperial champion in the game, then Calgar is the one for you. And that is our top 10 Imperials list for 2025. Well, maybe with 1 or 2 additions, eh Creed? It's getting increasingly difficult to pick the top 10 as the ranks of Imperials are growing so fast, especially when compared to the other teams. There are some other worthy mentions that I haven't quite worked out yet, Dante being a great example that I just can't decide on. He is shiny, he's legendary, and he should be truly great, but I'm just not seeing him in teams throughout the modes, and in the end, I truly believe that Calgar is more versatile than he is. Exeter Rose, another one that's really amazing, but he relies too much on a mechanical team around him, and that loses the versatility or flexibility of other champions. And then the Adeptus Custodes are really looking awesome too, but they're a little bit too new in the game for me to properly assess their impact. I'm really looking forward to the next list though, and because I really expect some of them to be there. Either way, I think it's safe to say that every pick that is on this list in some place is an incredibly good character, so don't hold back in leveling them if you've managed to get lucky drawing them out of requisition chests. In a video coming soon where we'll take a look at the top 10 Chaos for 2025, so hit that subscribe button because we have a lot of really big subscriber targets to hit this year, and I need all your help in reaching them. So see you next time.